Hey, good morning, Lenny.
Hey, hello.
Hey, everyone, welcome. I'm sure Jakob will be joining shortly. We'll get started.
So,
Hey everyone, welcome.
Hey, Jakob.
Hey, hello.
There is a slight chance that you see my screen.
There's a good chance.
Great. We will wait 3 more minutes for everyone to join. And then we will start with the TSC updates and ZAC updates.
Sounds good. Hey, Bruce, I'll plan to share my screen for the Zach.
sounds good. I can
Okay.
only think of the one slide that I will just briefly comment on but yes.
Okay.
Hey everyone, and welcome. It's O3, and as such, we will start with the presentation of the work that we delivered with Zowe 3.2, and we will showcase what are our general plans for 3.3. As usual, we will start with the TSC updates, followed by the ZAC updates. For the TFC updates, we will have around 10 to 15 minutes for each of these. Then we will have around 75 minutes for system demo and 75 minutes for the squad plans. So if you are not interested in everything, this is approximately when the different parts will be happening. Let's start with why we do Zowe and what are the reasons, what is the mission that we are on. The first goal is to simplify ZOS, make sure that for most of the developers, it's just another platform that they can easily and effectively work with, that despite having some specific qualities, doesn't entail too much hassle to start working on it and with it. Second goal is to reduce learning, make sure that those who already learned some tools and behaviors that were helping them in general software engineering and system operation and information technology space are able to use the same skills and tools that they are already used to and effective in. And as a key part of this, we want to attract new people to ZOS. We want to make sure that ZOS as a platform thrives and continues to succeed in the areas where the quality, sustainability, stability, and security are the key driving factors for platform choosing. As a part of work to deliver this, we want to build a great community and make sure that all the users are also part of it and that they feel welcome within the Zowe space. A bit on what we've done as a TSC in the last quarter. It's not much. We've been mainly preparing items that will be worked on in the next quarter and going forward. I will talk about it, but we did agree on one change. As Zowe V1 went out of support last year, it's now nearly 9 months. We decided that we will sunset Zowe V1 documentation. It means that it won't be available on Zowe docs. If you will still need to get back to it, the actual versions are still living in the GitHub, so you can always go back in GitHub and find the things that were there. But for the simplified usage through Zowe docs, it's not gonna be available anymore. As for the plans for next quarter, generally, we are still trying to make sure that it's easy to configure and that there are no roadblocks, at least in the paths that we are claiming to support. As part of this, we also want to make sure that it's clear what we are actually supporting. This has a few areas that are touching this space. First of it is system testing. We've been working on it before and we will go back to it, and that's making sure that it's well written and understood what Zowe itself does as a testing in the community space, and give a space for vendors and extenders to provide further information on what specific configurations do they test, and so they believe that it will work. Apart from that, we started exploring more about where and how we can fit within Zowe community samples. We've got over the last 3 months few examples coming to us of usage of the Python SDK and preparation of Go SDK and few other things like this. And we will be looking at what is the right place to put these and how we want to handle this to make it easy and instead of like creating a new separate project. We were also doing some analysis around the membership within Zowe. It seems that we have around 300 members of the Zowe space in the GitHub, but lots of them are not active anymore, for some cases for years. As there may be some potential security risks, we agreed that we will figure out a way to create an emeritus membership that will exist, that will have a limited set of privileges, but that will keep in mind and keep the information that these people were once active and relevant part of the community. Apart from that, and last piece is linked to the releases. As everybody knows, we generally release Zowe every 3 months, at least the current active version. But it seems that for the client-side releases, there is no point in being shackled with the 3 months release cycle for the server side. And so we are exploring the options to split this and make sure that it's easy for client side to move faster and for server side to be more stable and more suitable for running on the ZOS platform. Few numbers on where are we. These are the client-side numbers. We still don't have the server-side numbers. The best we can do is to gather the downloads from the Zowe org downloads page, but we know that it's not most of the numbers because there are other spaces like IBM, Broadcom, and iRocket, I think, as well, provides the packages in their own repositories. So even if I provided the information from zowe.org, the numbers won't tell us much. But for CLI, export for VS Code, and export for IntelliJ, the numbers are actually pretty relevant. CLI does grow its speed up compared to the last time. We are nearing 500,000 downloads of the CLI in next 3 to 6 months. This is what's gonna happen. Export for VS Code, we are gradually getting to 200,000 active users. We did have above 1 million downloads, but active users are more relevant metric in this space. Compared to the last quarter, there was a major slowdown in new users, but we are still gaining new users, so it's still okay. We will see how it changes throughout the year and what are the factors that impact these numbers. And for export for IntelliJ, we are gradually getting to 10,000 downloads, which given the fact that there are generally less users of the IntelliJ platform than the VS Code, and that it's a far more recent addition to the world of Zowe, still I would consider quite successful. Some numbers around how over the last quarter we are changing within the work that's happening. The main change is that there are far more commits, issues, and pull requests compared to last quarter, but it's to be expected because the last quarter had Christmas holidays, which usually tends to slow down everything. Generally, the amount of contributors is more or less the same. It's some contributors are going away, some are coming in, but the overall number of people that contributed something to Zowe in the last quarter is stable and around 170. Well, this is the part where I'm over last 9 months always a bit sad. Yeah, we are heavily depending on Broadcom. It's a bit better than last quarter. In last quarter, it was above 70%. Now it's 68%, but still, it's not a very good sign. And there is a lot of work on us to make sure that others can join the community and contribute effectively. And I think we will try to, once we figure out at least a bit more the configuration journey, I think this is going to be the next big item that we will be taking on ourselves to make sure that the community can try and grow. And also it's going to gradually get better as there will be more and more adoption by the customers, and maybe at some point they will be even able to donate at least something. And as I was mentioning, the numbers around the companies that are contributing the most, funnily enough, it's even more pronounced on the personal level. Like about 50% of all the activity in our pull request is done by 8 people. The good part is that not all of these 8 people are from Broadcom. The bad part is that it's 8 people. So let's hope that we will see more involvement by others so that they are not so much primary dependent. Interesting part that I found out when looking into the data is the size of the PRs. And the funny part is that what's changing is not necessarily the time, but the size. Last time we had most of the PRs below 500 lines, where I would say around half of them was under 100 lines. This time in the last quarter, we have most, and it's like 70% of PRs are above 500 lines. So for some reasons, our size of the pull request is growing, which tends to be not a very good sign. Obviously, it may be because of the npm dependencies, which is irrelevant. But if it's not the case, and for 430 PRs, I doubt that, it means that the code is probably less well reviewed. And so it would be great if we find a way to rather have more smaller PRs. But I understand that sometimes it's difficult. And that's it from me and the TSC. Does anyone has any questions towards things presented here?
Jakob, just a question on the size. Do you think that 500 is new and original code that's been written, or somebody maybe pulling in from an open community a block of capability, or do you even have a way to discern that?
I don't have a way to discern that. I would have to be anecdotal, and on API level, we are just integrating in larger chunks of code in one go.
Okay. Okay.
So I don't know what for the others. If it's gonna continue, I can take a look and try to find out what's the source, like what repositories are having the biggest PRs, and take a look, take a bit deeper dive on what is actually going on and why. Bruce?
Yeah, it's up to the TSC as to whether this is a concern or not. I was just trying to think of a reason why the number's so big, but
It's
Pardon?
probably good to point out, Andrew Hart from our team, he noticed that it is possible that in the past quarter or so, we could have had multiple updates to like dev dependencies. And with that comes package lock updates, shrink wrap updates, some like dependency tracking files, which tend to be larger than 500 lines. So it is possible that this quarter, maybe we decided to update some old dependencies.
And that's fair. The surprise for me, if it was like 100, 120 PRs of this size, I wouldn't even mention it. But I was really surprised by the fact that we effectively grew this size of PRs by tenfold.
Yeah, and as a result of that, do we change our testing in any way when we have something that big coming in?
I think that we have the same tests running on it. I think that we may have more eyes looking at the PRs, but this really depends. But generally, like the researches that were done around this are showing that once the PR is around 300, 400, 500 lines, like unless it's like the dependencies updates, it tends to be less reviewed and the quality is generally lower. Like whether it's our case, I don't know.
Gotcha.
Gene?
Sometimes on the client side, the testing is actually the contributor to the volume. A lot of pull requests I review have 2, 3, 4 source files of modification and dozens of test files being modified. So that can actually lead to some larger volume, but at least it's an indication we're trying to increase the code coverage. It's usually one of the reasons why some of those tests. I'm not sure that makes the problem any simpler. It's just a bit of an explanation why. And I haven't really analyzed whether how much of the client side is a contributor to the size, but that might also be a factor. That's
We will see. I will bring it up in next quarter if it pertains. If it was just one time thing, then it's just one time things. Okay. And with this, I will turn the words to Rose, I believe, for the ZAC updates.
Yeah, over to me. Let me share. Okay, in theory, are you seeing the ZAC update?
Yes.
All right, and let's put it in slideshow. And see if I can come off. There we go. All right, thanks, Jakob. So from the ZAC, again, we're the Zowe Advisory Council, somewhat of an equivalent to the product management arm of Zowe, and we are Bruce Armstrong, Michael Dubois, myself, Rose Sakatch, and Paul Wade. And what we'll share what we've done in the past couple of planning sessions. We'll share with all of you the primary topics of discussion over the last quarter or so, what we've learned, and where we're planning to go for 3.3. So as far as focus topics over this past quarter, we had 4 major topics that we focused in on. First being making the server install wizard available for consumers to help with up and running. This is something that was introduced as a technical preview in the hopes of helping consumers with the install and config of the server-side components of Zowe. And we wanted to make sure that folks felt or understood that that was ready for prime time, and we're anxiously awaiting some feedback on that capability. We also brainstorm ways to improve the experience of the consumer with Zowe Docs. And we had many ideas on how we might go about doing that. One of them was to create a template for the vendors that rely on Zowe, either as extenders or folks that deliver solutions that are based on Zowe. And this in this manner, we're trying to solve the problem that some of the consumers of Zowe, as directed by vendor solutions, maybe aren't clear on what areas, what components of Zowe are primarily required for that solution. And we thought perhaps delivering some kind of template that the vendors could all adhere to would help that experience. We're also looking at other ways, for example, perhaps leveraging AI to help guide consumers through the appropriate areas of the documentation to see if that could save them time. We're looking at introducing a webinar to help folks understand the general navigation around Zowe Docs. And as Jakob mentioned, we're anxious to have folks contribute and become members of the community. And we thought, what better way than to have folks who are experiencing challenges, difficulties, or finding areas within the doc that could be improved, turn them into contributors right then and there, make it as easy as possible for them to help us improve the doc and truly understand it from the point of view of the consumer. Also, our conformance program, we realized our conformance program failed to recognize extenders and folks who introduced solutions that wanted to be sure that they were interoperable with Zowe V2. Insofar as we had introduced the Zowe V3 conformance program, which ensures that vendors who leverage Zowe and produce Zowe extensions are interoperable with V3. We realized that because V2 will be around and supported well into 2026, that it made sense to keep the Zowe V2 conformance program open for vendors who wanted to support consumers who wanted to stay on that maintenance version of Zowe. And so we made sure that that was available. And then finally, we learned about Zowe-based solutions that we really may not be aware of for various reasons. Some of us are interacting with some of the vendors all over the world and are starting to learn that they do have extensions and/or solutions built on Zowe. And we wanted the industry to have a full understanding of all of these vendors and folks who are leveraging Zowe for one reason or another. So we're looking at ways to possibly showcase to the industry how other folks beyond the conformance program are leveraging Zowe. We also introduced with, actually this came from the Open Mainframe project, we introduced a new means to showcase the depth and breadth of the conformance program and vendors and extenders who are leveraging Zowe. Changed the way the conformance badges were presented from prior years. And this is just for awareness. So for users and extenders out there, we no longer categorize Zowe conformance by Zowe version. Instead, we display badges for any solution or extender who has achieved Zowe conformance. And in order to determine at what level that badge represents, what level that vendor or solution has achieved conformance, you actually have to click inside the badge itself. And so, for example, on the left, we show the wider landscape. There's actually more badges than this. This is just a snapshot of some of them. But to truly understand what type of conformance was earned and what component of Zowe is it relevant for, you would click on the badge. In this case, this is the Rocket Pro JCL badge. And inside the badge, you will see that it has achieved Zowe conformance for the Explorer for Visual Studio Code at the Zowe V2 level. Again, that's just to make everybody aware that that landscape view has changed. We also are out and about in touting everything Zowe has achieved to date. And we're on a mission actually to ensure that all of our customers have proper education, proper understanding of what we feel is the primary challenge amongst the community or the consumer base, which is the install and config. And so this year at, for example, the Share conference in DC back in February, we had a number of sessions that were dedicated to install and config. Pretty decently attended with a peak of attendees at the client session that Joe Winchester and Gene Johnston hosted with 41 attendees. Essentially just a clear indication of the Zowe adoption, particularly on the client side. But also we're still hearing that some of the installers are continue to struggle with the install. However, we are making good progress. And just to call out, we did also have a lab that focused in on helping consumers and users understand how to connect the dots between what the Zowe technology is and the possibilities of what it could provide for your organization, including automation, observability, and modernization. From an educational perspective, the community itself contributes to several different areas to help bring Zowe to, I guess, just to get the word out and to help the wider community become educated. We have a blog site, for example, that's dedicated to focusing in on Zowe blogs. Joe Winchester and Dan Kalowski contributed a couple of blogs over the past quarter. We also have Zowe quarterly update webinars. We featured the API mediation layer in March. Jakob delivered a session on the simplification of the mediation layer, which included native support for hardware ICF key rings, open telemetry support, and some API rate limiting as recent additions. And Jakob also talked about the integration with other Zowe components. That webinar, as well as any webinar that we post, is available on a YouTube playlist. I will post that in the chat in case anyone is interested, as Bruce talks about some data points.
Thanks, Rose. So those of you that have attended these in the past maybe recognize this chart. You remember Jakob had mentioned we do have a challenge in tracking the download of the ZOS components. Now, what I have done, and this is a very IBM centric view, and I will be the first to admit that I'm not disclosing all the information because the actual numbers are considered IBM confidential because, you know, it's how many people are downloading from Shop Z. But I just wanted to point out some of the trends. So first of all, and just for awareness, this does not reflect Zowe 3.0 yet. IBM, while we've made the announcement of our distribution, I'll just say our distribution was late to market compared to its availability on Zowe.org. So this is primarily showing the numbers of Zowe 2.0 compared to 1.0. And there's, I guess, a couple takeaways here. One is 2.0, you know, is alive and well, and it has grown over the last couple quarters. The other comment on Zowe 1.0, just, yes, it's out of support. Yes, we're taking the V1 documentation down, but I have been surprised that, at least from an IBM point of view, just within the last few months, we still get contacted by customers, you know, some of them fairly large customers that are migrating from 1.0 to either 2.0 or 3.0. And we had some back and forth as to, you know, what the customer, you know, wanted to do. But you'll notice that that blue bar does show a slight decrease. So there are still some 1.0 customers out there. Now, again, just because we've heard from a customer does not mean all of that blue bar represents existing customers. There could be some out there that I consider them orphans, right? They might have downloaded V1, experimented with it, and decided not to pursue it, or they chose another vendor or even Zowe.org to get the code. So again, these numbers just show some trends, but it's hard to make, you know, firm conclusions. So the shout out is 2.0 continued to grow, 1.0 decreased. We'll see, hopefully by our next quarterly meeting, some 3.0 numbers out there that I can report on. All right, that's all I wanted to say. Go.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, so finally, what are we looking to do over the next quarter as the squads work towards 3.3? Well, we're still looking for new and innovative ways to obtain consumer feedback. We'll be looking towards getting some recommendations from the folks in the Linux Foundation OMP. Quite often they have ideas on how other projects are doing in being successful at obtaining the same type of information. So we'll look towards that. We also have ideas within the community as to how we might be able to obtain feedback from consumers, whether it's through Zowe Docs or through our Zowe.org or through the webinars or the conferences that we attend and the customers that we visit. As Jakob mentioned, we're always looking for ways to increase the community, to grow the community. We're looking at essentially nothing's off the table. We're looking at maybe introducing some participation rewards, not anything that would be beyond, you know, some type of recognition as a committer or something like that. But we do know that we have to do a better job of articulating the value not only to the individual, but to the company that allows the individual to become a part and a member of the community. We mentioned earlier that we're looking at trying to determine how to showcase this worldwide use of Zowe. and gaining some insights, more insights. I know we talk quite often about showcasing use cases and delivering use cases and reporting on use cases. We're going to continue to drive towards gaining some awareness on that. And then finally, this doesn't happen often, but it happened recently, and we have opportunities to possibly accept more contributions to the Zowe project. And the ZAC and the TSC in combination are in discussions to determine, what are the contribution guidelines, what is a great fit for Zowe, and what isn't. Some of us believe that Zowe is complete and has all the components it needs to be successful. In other cases, there may be opportunity for us to accept contributions, but we'll be discussing and figuring that out over the next quarter or so. And I think that is it for Zach. Any questions or comments for those of us who are presenters for Zach? In essence, the whole community is Zach, but we're the representatives.
Rose,
As a
just
general,
go.
sorry about that. I guess it's a general question. Could we have or see some of that data aggregated? This is the one that Bruce showed, right? From different angles, different vendors, those representatives on the SAC, right? We have Broadcom representatives, Rocket, IBM, and maybe have Zoe's numbers as well. See how kind of some trends on the downloads for each one of those sites, right? Would look like and on a quarterly basis, kind of to see how the trends are going for V1, V2, and V3. I think that would be cool to see in general if we can get that data.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have to think about that some. Like I said, I stripped the actual numbers out because it's confidential, whether, I don't know, we'd fall into this trap of comparing which vendors have how many downloads and blah, blah, blah. But the point's taken on the requirement. We'll
Yeah.
just have to think about how we'd handle that.
Could
Yeah.
we at least figure out a way to add to the shop Z the numbers that we have for the zoe.org/downloads?
Yeah, and for the Zowe.org downloads, is that just an FTP request or something from a?
Somewhat-ish. It's a HTTP request, so we can get the numbers. I can provide these numbers for you on a quarterly basis, so you can do the aggregation so
Yeah.
that you don't have to share the numbers from IBM if this is an issue.
Okay.
Yeah. So that graph, Bruce, for example, would be, downloads in combination from Zowe.org and ShopZ.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, keep in mind, right, in the Zowe.org, so the ShopZ numbers only reflect the SMPE packaging that we do. So I do think it would be of interest from Zowe.org to see the demands for PAX downloads, just because, and I'm speculating here, but I think there's probably a lot of PAX downloads, especially for those environments, might be dev test or whatever, that you want a quick install with PAX. So somehow merging that data together, I think would be interesting.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Rose, I was just also going to do a shout out, and you might have mentioned it in passing. In the past, the conformance badges was kind of the one place where there was linkage from the Zowe.org site to vendor specific, product integrations. There's also, I think, the CLI extension documentation that, to me, is a good place that pulls together the Zowe.org world, I'll say, and vendor specific world. And we had talked a little bit about how maybe the Zowe doc could link to vendor sites or whatever. I think that would be interesting to kind of pull these two worlds together. And I think we've got a lot of sorting out to do about how we would do that practically, but I like the idea.
Yeah, the Zoe Web Help you're referring
Yes.
to. Yes.
Yes,
Zoe
for the
CLI and Web
CLI.
Help. Yes.
And it's kind of taking that philosophy and applying it to, more vendor integrations.
Right. And that is covered by, the worldwide usage of Zoe. How best
Right.
can we showcase that? Because we know it's happening
Right.
and we want to share that with the industry. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. And just a big thank you to the wider community, because we're here just to help and guide and advise, but you all do the work, and we so appreciate everything that you do and look forward to growing the community. Thanks, Jakob.
Thank you. Gotham, did you wanted to ask or add something? Okay, so it was probably unintentional unmuting. Okay, thanks everyone for being with us for the TSC and ZAC updates. The next part will be the demonstration, and first I won't go for the pause now. We will have a larger pause after we are through the demos. The first system demo is from CLI Squad. Adam, do you know who will be presenting?
Yes, that will be Andrew. Andrew Hart.
Andrew Hart, it's yours, so please feel free to share and present.
Absolutely. Give me one moment. All right. Can people see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you very much, Rose. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Harn. I'm a member of the CLI and Zoe Explorer for VS Code squads. Today, I'm going to be demonstrating a couple of new features in Zoe CLI and one new feature in Zoe Explorer for the 3.2 release. The first thing I'm going to start out with is a small change that was made to the Zowe ZOS files copy dataset command. We just wanted to show it to folks as it is a quality of life improvement that was heavily requested. The command, as most people know, copies a source dataset to a target dataset, and in the process can also create the dataset. We have added a new option, --overwrite. This option is most useful for people who have some sort of, say, template dataset that they want to copy over another existing partition dataset or another dataset that already exists. And all this does is it allows the user to, in one command, delete the old dataset that they are going to be copying to and perform the copy, including all members. There isn't too much to demonstrate with this. It's just that if you specify the overwrite flag, it will replace the entire target dataset, including all members, with the source dataset. And even if the members don't have any kind of naming overlap, they will be overwritten and removed. Another feature that we recently added was the ability to perform searches with regexes. And I'm going to bring that up here. So we have a command, Zowe ZOS files search datasets. This command allows a user to search multiple datasets or a partition dataset for any kind of string. However, recently in the 3.2 release, it was expanded to also be able to accept regexes. As you can see here, I'm planning to demonstrate that in this particular partition dataset, I'm going to be looking for anything that contains the word ball. And if I go ahead and execute this command, it will very clearly come back very quickly and just show a couple of different sports in my sports member that contain the word ball. So basketball, baseball, dodgeball, etc. This is very useful if someone has an idea of maybe 1 or 2 words that they're looking for in a partition data set, or in a data set in general, where they have an idea of what they're looking for, but they're not entirely sure how things are phrased or how they're written out in that particular data set or member. This enhancement made it in with 3.2, and it is very, very useful. However, we also added it to Zowe Explorer in the 3.2 release. So here in Zowe Explorer, we have a couple of partition data sets. If I right-click the data set that I just used in my CLI command, there is an option for searching PDS members. And now this UI has kind of changed since the 3.1 release. We now have history for searches that gets saved off, much like many of the other Zowe Explorer commands save off entries. But we also have options here. So as you can see, if I click this Edit Options selection in the Quick Pick, I have an option for case sensitive, and I have an option for regex, or you could use them together. In this case, I'm going to do a search that is both specifying a regex and is case sensitive. And I'm once again going to search for the search term ball. And as you can see, it pulled up the search results here with the same contents, same positions. And if a user wants to click any one of these, they can go ahead and open that particular partition dataset member or dataset, and it will highlight the where it found the term in that member. And again, just to also demonstrate, if I were to search this other partition data set here, and I'm just going to search it for my name. However, I'm going to disable the regex search as I'm just searching for my name and I know one of these contains it. It has located only one instance in this entire partition data set where my name is spelled exactly Andrew Harn with a capital A and a capital H, even though there are other members that have it in all caps. It has only identified the one with the correct casing. And I do believe that's it for all of my demos. If there are any questions, otherwise I'm going to be turning it over to Trey Yelovich.
Is there some other technology used for the search, or is ZOSMF natively supporting the regular expressions?
ZOSMF natively supports the regular expressions.
Oh, great, thanks.
So that was going to be my question. What does regex stand for?
Yes, regex also stands for regular expression. It's a commonly used sort of pattern used in coding that allows a user to specify sets of characters or individual words that can be searched for. It's basically a matching engine.
And does it, by definition, indicate that I'm not looking for an exact case match?
There are additional options that can be passed into a regular expression to tell it that you are looking specifically for a case match. Otherwise, in other situations, it will assume that you are looking for any case.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, if there are no more questions, I'm going to hand it over to Trey.
All right, thanks, Andrew. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Hopefully you should be able to see my
We
VS
do.
Code window. Great. Thanks, Jakob. Hi, everyone. This is Trey Yelovich from the Zowe team, and I have a couple exciting Zowe Explorer enhancements to share with you today. First, I'll start with the new pagination feature for listing datasets and PDS members, and then I'll jump into some of the refresh enhancements for version 3.2. In the latest Zowe Explorer release, pagination is now enabled when listing datasets and PDS members, dividing large lists into separate, more manageable pages. To configure this option, you can open the command palette and select the Preferences Open Settings UI option, or you can click on the cog in the bottom left of VS Code and select Settings from the menu that appears. From there, you can search for the string paginate to find the new pagination settings. The first option listed is for the maximum number of datasets and PDS members to list per page. Configure this setting to your liking based on the amount of items you'd like to see per page, or set it to 0 to turn off pagination. The default is 100, but I'll set it to a small value to keep all the items visible as I navigate through the demo. When searching for datasets under a specific profile, the list is split into pages if the total number of items exceeds the max items per page. For example, I'll search for a pattern with my high-level qualifier. And as you can see, it returned more than 10 results, so it split the list into 2 pages. You can see that the previous page and next page navigation items are now visible. You can glance at the description beside each navigation item to see what page it takes you to and the total page count. So you can see that with this dataset pattern, it returned 12 datasets, so going to the next page will take you to page 2 of 2. If the navigation item is disabled and cannot be clicked, this indicates that you've either reached the beginning or the end of the list. So I can no longer go to another page, but now I can go back to the previous page, page 1. This feature also works within favorited PDS and search patterns. For example, I can expand my tray.cobol favorited PDS, and since there are more than 10 members, it's also been split into pages. I can navigate through the pages just like I was navigating through the list of datasets. This feature also supports favorited member patterns. So if I go ahead and expand this list here with tray.encoding.star and then tray.cobol, but only members ending in CBL, you'll see that only 4 results were returned, so we've hidden the navigation items for usability. And now if I expand the tray.cobol PDS, you'll see that only the members ending in CBL are shown, and I can continue to interact with them. Right. So let's say that I want to change the page size while I have a profile expanded. If I go ahead and change this setting to 5, you'll see that the profile is refreshed and it now reflects the new setting that you've applied. And now the result's been split into 3 pages. Lastly, if the profile type you are using does not support pagination, your experience of listing datasets and PDS members remains the same and all items are listed. If I go ahead and add an older version of the Zowe Explorer FTP extension, which did not support list pagination, you'll see that when I search for my high-level qualifier, that all the datasets are returned as expected. But not to worry, as version 3.2 of the Zowe Explorer FTP extension does support paginating datasets and PDS members. I just simply used an old version to show the behavior for profile types that don't yet support it. And with that, that's the new list pagination feature for datasets and PDS members. Now I'll jump to the new behavior for refreshing trees. If I go back to my ZOSMF profile here, I'll just go ahead and disable pagination. The refresh button at the top of each view has been updated, so now that profiles with a search pattern set or a file directory set, those will update with the newest contents. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce a data set. All right, so a new data set should now be under my HLQ. And if I click the refresh button, you'll see that that new data set now appears. This behavior is also the same through the USS view. So if I go ahead and search for my demo folder here, you can see that there aren't any contents yet. But if I go ahead and introduce a file in another window, sorry for the delay. Accidentally lost connection to my SSH host. 1 second. Okay, sorry for the delay. Now I've introduced a new file into this demo 3.2 folder. And now if I refresh the USS view, you can see that that file appears under that profile. And I can go ahead and click on it to view its contents. And with that, I think that's all I have for my demo. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll be passing it on to Lakeitha.
Yeah, there's a question. It's Vladislav. I'm sorry, maybe I missed that, but did you introduce it for the jobs view as well?
The pagination, are you referring to the pagination feature or the refresh enhancement?
I mean the pagination feature.
So the pagination is only supported for listing datasets and PDS members. However, we did add a type of pagination for job spools that I believe Pooja will be showing us today.
It's like spools, not the jobs itself, like the job list.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, got it. Because we have the same problem. Okay.
Trey, couple questions.
Sure.
If I had set my pagination and my search resulted in, say, 100 pages, is there a way for me to quickly get to page 50, for example? Or do I have to click?
That is a good question. We intend to add a feature like the ability to jump to a certain page, but at this time, only the previous page and next page navigation items are available.
Okay,
but we
so
do plan
it's-
on enhancing it in the future.
Gotcha. So for now, it's a linear, must go through each of them. Okay. And then the other question is, what is the default for those fields?
The default for dataset pagination is 100.
Okay.
So
it's
if
the
there's
same
more than
as
100 data sets or, excuse me, members per page, then it will split that list into pages.
Okay. Great. And I think that was it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Are there any other questions? Doesn't sound like it, so I'll pass it on to Lakeitha. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Trey. Let me share my screen. Okay.
We see your screen.
Able to see my screen?
We do.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm Likita. I'm part of Zowe Explorer Squad. Today I'm going to be demoing a couple of new enhancements for the Zowe Explorer. The first comes is the copy of datasets cross LPARs. Here you can see that I have two of the profiles from different LPARs. That is, we have it on different hosts. So I'll be retrieving my datasets from one of the profile. Yeah. So here I have a sequential dataset, and when you right click it, here you have the option of copy. So I'll be copying it, and this is my profile from a different helper, and I'm going to be pasting it here. Now here I'm going to be changing my HLQ. Here you see that it is currently copying that dataset from one helper to other. So the copying is complete, and if I retrieve it, yeah, you can see that you had a copy of this dataset into this profile with the same content. So the same happens for the PDS as well. I want to show you guys a scenario where here in my second profile I already have a dataset which is naming as fecuni 5.copy9, and now I'm going to be copying this PDS to my second profile. Now you see that as it is already existing, it will give a pop-up for you to replace the existing one or not. So I'll go with the replace option. Now whatever the content you previously had in this dataset will be replaced with what you have copied. So the source I have is the testing file, and the destination, it got replaced whatever the content it had it before. So this is one of the feature, and we have recently also added the drag and drop feature of for the data sets. So now I have a PDS with no members, and I wanna drag and drop these two members from one of my PDS to the other. So here you can see that moving of the members and saving the data sets. Yeah. Now these two members have been copied to this PDS. And also when you try to copy a sequential onto a PDS or a PDS onto a PDS, the user will be getting an error saying cannot drop a sequential or partition dataset into another partition. This drag and drop functionality is also applied on cross helper, but the thing is the HLQ what you have should be supported on both the profiles. And one more feature that we have brought in for the Zowe Explorer is that the Zowe Explorer support for environment variables. So for that, first you need to go to your settings and search for Zowe override with environment variables. When you check in this section, so it will be taking your environment variables into consideration and override whatever the values you have in the config profiles. So now that I have it checked in, and now I'll be removing the secure array and here I'll be giving my user and password environment variables. Now I'll just be quitting my VS Code in order for it to pick up the changes and reopen it again. And for this profile, I have my user and password as Zowe opt user and Zowe opt password. So now if I try to authenticate my profile, it is no longer asking me for the user and password, but directly taking it from the environment variables and then getting the datasets for me. Yeah. So that's it for me. Any questions?
I guess as you're going cross LPAR, is the copy coming through your VS Code workstation, or are you somehow setting up an FTP? Say the LPARs are in different data centers on, two sides of the world. How is that transfer actually occurring? Does my question make sense?
Yeah. So right now we have introduced an API that is taking a dataset from that source LPAR and then uploading it to the second one.
So it's passing through your workstation.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I was just trying to imagine the architecture. So.
Yeah.
Well, what is the API that was introduced? Is that ZOSMF or?
It's just a client-side API.
It's
I imagine it's the Zowe client APIs that are also used by the CLI cross-platform copy.
Yeah, it's an adoption of those SDK APIs that and then I think we added a Zowe Explorer API on top of that for our extenders to pick that up, and their protocols can be handled as well.
So does that mean then that particular copy is only showing on a desktop? And not if I were to go into ISPF, for example, would I see it?
It's a host transfer. The answer to Bruce was, is it being handled by the host, the servers, or is it being handled by the client? The clients will download the file from one LPAR and then upload it to the next. So there is the transfers happening through the client, and it's not a like the LPARs transferring from one to another via server or REST API.
But Rose, when it's uploaded from the client to the destination LPAR, it would show up in ISPF.
Mm-hmm. But there's still a call that has to be made for both.
Yes. Yeah, the client will handle those calls for the user.
And don't get me wrong, this is not a bad thing. I was just trying to imagine how the data transfer goes. So
yeah, no, it's a good question, because quite conceivably I may not have the authority on one LPAR.
But if you don't have the authority, you'll get an error back. We still work with the REST APIs, and the user IDs have their authorizations, and dependent on their level of authorization, will determine whether actions can be done or not.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
we would just return the response from the REST APIs on the server if they did not have permission to do something.
As I recall, during the original implementation of the SDK cross-platform copy APIs, there was some investigation on can it be server to server with no intermediate download? And I don't recall the details, but I seem to remember there were logistical problems with that, and then they sort of fell back to the safest way to ensure we make this happen is download and then re-upload.
Great, thanks, guys.
Yeah, actually, in the IntelliJ plugin, we already have that. And yeah, for the logistics, there are some quite significant reasons to do the same as VS Code Explorer does. Because using the client like Zowe Explorer to download and upload to the another server, it's like having a single point that for sure has authority to use both of the connections to provide such functionality. So bringing the direct tunnel is actually a difficult thing in here, rather than using this technology. Yeah.
Okay. If no more questions, I'll be passing it to Santoshi.
Yeah, thank you, Nikita. I'll share my screen.
Thank you very much. Hey, Santoshi, we see your screen.
Yeah. Hello everyone, I'm Santoshi Boina. I'm part of Zowe Explorer Squad. Today I will show the demo of two features which I have recently worked on. The first one is providing direct connect client-side certificate support for USMF. For that, in the config file for this USMF profile, I'll be providing the paths of certificate file and the certificate key file. Now applying search on USMF1 profile, we can see that the profile got validated. And it's able to show the data sets. Yeah, this is for the demo. And coming to the second feature which I have worked is providing rich hover for Zowe Explorer profiles. We can just now we have seen that this USMF profile is using the certificate-based authentication. Now the hover information contains the name of the profile, the type of the profile used, the auto store value which is present in the config file, which can either be true or false, and the info about config file which can either be a global or project level config. The secure credentials enabled, it refers to an VS Code setting, whether if it is enabled or disabled, and the type of the authentication method used. It can either be basic authentication, token-based, or certificate-based authentication. And for the dataset tree view, we can see the pattern that is used for the search. And for the USS tree view, when we hover over the profile, instead of the pattern, we will be able to see the path that is used as a search here. For the job preview, we'll be able to see the job search pattern here, and the hover also gets updated when we try searching with an job ID. Yeah, and also when we try changing the authentication, the hover info also gets updated. For example, if I consider this API-ML profile, it is not in any of the authentication method. Let me go with basic authentication first. The hover info has that it is using the basic authentication. Now when I try to change the authentication method, Yeah, now the APML profile started using the token-based authentication. Now we can see that the our information got updated to token-based authentication. Yeah, this concludes the demo. Is anyone having questions?
Hi, this is Peter. Do we provide any documentation to introduce the certificates to customers, like how to create and manage them?
No, it is work in progress. It is not yet completed.
Oh, okay. And would it make sense to combine, as you had the absolute paths there to the certificates, would it make sense to combine this with the environment variables that we saw earlier, so that the content of the certificates actually in environment variables, so you can share the profiles and again still with your team members instead of using absolute path names?
It should automatically pick up with that environment variable work, that if you had some set, whether it be the Zowe CLI supported ones that are the Zowe _op_ and then the property key, or the self-set environment variables that Nima had demoed. So we can test it, but it should automatically go ahead and pick up that environment variable support if you were
cool.
to save those paths into an environment variable.
It's just string substitution then, right? Yeah, so that sounds good, thanks.
And for the documentation on like were you asking for like the REST API setup for certificates?
Well, if customers have not used them, but found this like an interesting idea, how can they learn about the certificates, how to create and manage them? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, we have to
link to
we
some
have to
literature.
look. It would probably be in the Zowe SMF REST API documentation, but we can see if we link to it from like the Zowe CLI documentation, as it's some of the authentication methods are documented there for certificate support. We'll just have to double check to make sure that we link to any outside documentation from the Zowe org docs. Cool.
And who populates those two fields, cert file and cert key file?
The user will have to populate it. The system administrator will give the user developer their certificates to download. And then they'll just have to point to it in their config file. I know the CLI team had some investigation on these certificate files being supported in the secrets or the credential managers, but I think that is still undergoing. But right now, yeah, it would just be pointing to where you've downloaded your certificates that were given to you by your system admin.
So every single user would have to do this.
Yes, if they were going to have certificate support, they would have to point to their certificates on their local machine in the config file.
And seeing it in clear text like this, I would have to imagine is going to be an audit concern. Which is why
just a file name. That's why I was asking about putting it in environment variables so it can be shared with others. You don't have to put an absolute path name in there.
Yeah, we're adding an environment variable support in this one as well, so it could be used along with this. We will have to wait for the Zowe Secrets SDK to add that support for these being held in the credential managers of the operating system. Once that support is added, we'll be able to adopt that as well.
Yeah. So back to the point of documentation, we may want to make a note that this is clearly visible in this implementation.
But the certificates are not visible, only the paths where they're stored on the
Gotcha. But yeah, I see. Got it.
And they're not supposed to be shared, right? So because you have your path in there, you're not putting into Git, right? It's not for project level team profiles, only for personal ones.
I believe that this could also be set up by a sysadmin if they had certs in a designated location on the system. They could already have cert file and cert key file properties set up for a user. And additionally, they could define cert file and cert key file in the secure array so that they would be stored securely in the vault. That would just mean that the paths, as we see them here, would be stored as secure properties in the vault. So that would be separate from the investigation that was mentioned to be able to like access the certificate store directly using the Secrets SDK. But I think there would be a way to at least store the paths securely given the current functionality.
If you are done with the questions, I can pass to Pujal.
Hi everyone. I'll share my screen now. So my name is Pujal, and today I'll be demoing pagination for job spools in Zowe Explorer. So in this enhancement, we're enabling users to load large spool files in smaller chunks, especially for when jobs have thousands of lines of output. So to simulate this, I created a script that prints numbers 1 through 1,000 on each line. And in the Zowe Explorer settings, the default for records to fetch is currently set to 100. But for this example, we can set it to 50. And we'd also want to have this box checked off to enable the pagination. So when I submit a job, and view its output, you'll see that the first 50 lines of the job spool is printed, and by clicking the Load More button, you'll be able to view the next 50 and onwards. And also, if the pagination setting is left unchecked and I submit the job again, you'll see that the pagination isn't applied and the Load More button does not appear at the end of the job output. And that's all for this demo. Are there any questions?
Just a quick question. So if I fail to indicate that I want, a limit of 50 lines or 10 lines or whatever before I submit the job, I can't change it after the job has completed and get that paginated view. I have to resubmit the job.
Right, yeah, you'll have to resubmit to see the new set of lines that you choose.
Okay.
If you, just curious, if you change the value and then did a pull from mainframe on one of the spool files, would that reload the editor using pagination?
You meant the job, correct?
The output of the job, and also enable the paginate setting for spool pagination. Thank you.
There you
Yeah,
go.
you were able to see it there.
Nice. Okay. May want to make sure we document that.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
And if there's no more questions, I'll pass it over to Joshua.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. Okay. I'm Joshua Waters. I work for a customer, but I work on Zowe Explorer in my free time. And I'd just like to demo a quick one about navigating USS. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so this is suggested by Joe quite a while ago, and I noticed the same when I'm working in packages in USS, for example. I prefer not to have to manually change my filter all the time. So, for example, if I'm working in this directory and I want to change my filter to the ZOSMF directory, for example, I can now right-click it and click Search by Directory, and it will now change your filter to that that directory. And also, now if you want to basically CD up your filter to something above, you can now click this arrow, go up one level, and now I'm in the directory above. And that's for this one. Any questions? Nope. Okay. I'll be passing on to Billy.
Hey, thanks, Josh. That looked great. Let me go ahead and share my screen. There's the button. All right, can everybody see my screen? I just got a couple little slides. I'm gonna touch base on a couple of things that were added dealing with the team configurations and some updates with the schema. So first we'll talk about some updates for profile schema. Zowe Explorer will update the global schema information upon VS Code initialization and extender registration. We send imperative the metadata that is collected from, we have the ZOSMF one and the FTP for the Zowe extensions, and then our other extenders pass their metadata information to us to help prepare and create profiles and team configurations. So all that information is sent over to imperative upon the initialization and registration to update the global schema file if any changes were made to those profile properties. After some digging, we did find that it's very important for our extenders to include a schema version in their profile's metadata information. This helps kick off that check in imperative and do those updates to the on-disk file copy. We also added a new Zowe Explorer command palette option for on-demand user-driven schema updates. I did include some screenshots here. The command option is called Zowe Explorer Update Profile Configuration Schema. If the user only has a global schema or a project level schema, it'll just update the one that's being used. If they do have both in place and being used, they are offered the option to only update their global or update the global and the project level. We also created a new Zowe Explorer API for creating team configurations. This code was pre-existing in Zowe Explorer. We moved it to the Zowe Explorer API for our extenders that introduced their own tree view window and can have the same functionality that we have. Users are familiar with in Zowe Explorer if they press the plus button next to one of our tree view windows, they will see the option shown in the screenshot here to create a new team configuration file or edit their team configuration file. This new API is the one that would deal with the create new team configuration file. So what it does is it will give our extenders the option to include this in their list that they offer their users. And then upon clicking their option that we'll call our new API, it'll go through the same process that we have and now have adopted in Zowe Explorer from the Zowe Explorer APIs after the move. So they will go through the process of the check will happen to see if a global or a project level is in use, and it'll give them the option. If a project is open in VS Code, it will give them the multiple options to choose to create a global or a project level. If there is no workspace open in VS Code, it will just create the global by default. And that was all the updates I wanted to share. Any questions or concerns about these updates?
Yeah, Billy, for this one, I'm not sure that I'm grasping all of it, but it seems to me like there may be a conformance implication for extenders that choose to use this.
We looked, it was requested by like the Kix extension. And then we have some other extenders that create their own little tree view that'll be added into the, the panel with the Zowe Explorer views, the MVS, the USS, and the jobs views. The Kix introduces a new view, and they added a plus, and they wanted to have similar behavior, but instead of them having to duplicate all that code, they can now use this API and have the same behavior that Zowe Explorer has itself.
So for those extensions that choose to leverage it, should there be conformance criteria that ensures that they're leveraging it in the same manner that Zowe Explorer does?
I don't believe we would have to add any new conformance. We have required if they're conformant already, whether they're it would be like the new protocol, new view, and they were already adopting the Zowe Explorer APIs, it would just be there for them to pick up this extra new functionality if they wanted to.
Okay, so it sounds like they can choose to leverage it if they do. There's nothing beyond that we have to ensure that they're doing in order to stay consistent.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
I don't even, it doesn't even accept parameters or anything. We do all the handling ourselves. They would just call it if they wanted to have a create new team configuration option in their menu. Then it would just call our API, and we would handle the whole creation process, which would include the secondary screenshot with the prompt and everything. So their extension doesn't have to do anything but call our API.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
And Billy, you gave the example of CICS, but IMS could do this.
IBM's debug, they have their own window that's outside of the Zowe, the 3 Zowe views. So they have their own view. The Kix has their own view, and I'm sure there's other extensions that have their own view. This could even be used outside of the Zowe views if another extender wanted to have the ability to create team configuration files. They could adopt Zowe Explorer APIs, call this method, and then we would handle that. We would check if there's a workspace open in VS Code. If there is, we present this option for them, whether they want to create global or project. If not, then it would just follow through and create global. So it could be used in any VS Code environment.
Okay, I'm just trying
to have this capability.
I'm trying to get my head around how this scales, right? Could I have an ops MVS view, or do you see this growing? Well, we can take it offline. I'll wait and see this in
Yeah, I'm not sure how much it'll grow, but I know that the Kix team, they had requested a while back where I think we still have plans to move the edit portion out of Zowe Explorer into the Zowe Explorer APIs to give them the ability to have that same process as well without having to duplicate the code that we already have in place.
Okay. All right.
And
Thanks.
I'm sorry, but I guess we should move on. We
Yeah.
are starting to get a bit behind.
All right, I will stop sharing. I'm gonna pass it over to Peter Homer.
Thank you very much, Billy.
I have to find the unmute button. Hello, everyone. This is Peter Homer. I'm also demonstrating on Zowe Explorer. So, as you might know or not know, VS Code is fully localized and offers various languages that people can switch to. And we started in the beginning, many years ago when Zowe Explorer started, we immediately also externalized all our strings and started a community project similar to how Microsoft runs it, right? Asking for contributors of the translations, and unfortunately never received any. So for years, we basically kind of were waiting, but not also actively requesting people to contribute localizations, but it didn't happen. But if you want to build a commercial product on top of Zowe Explorer and sell it to countries that demand it, like Canada and Quebec, right, that require French localization, you have a problem. And so what then we decided as IBM is to kind of donate the localization because with the event of large language model, translating it with AI has become actually really quite cheap. And so what we're doing now is basically we're loading the latest source code repo from Zowe Explorer into our pipeline, run it with the translation of all our other components through the translation pipeline, zip up the resulting strings, and send them to the Zowe Artifactory so that they can be picked up then by Zowe builds. So the way this then looks, if you want to use it, right? So as an end user, basically the way Microsoft documents it provides it, they provide these language packs, first of all, that will then give you the localized strings for all of the other VS Code functions, all the menus and so on. And then extenders have the ability then to bring in their own localizations in those files that I showed you that we find now in Artifactory. So to demonstrate this, there's a command in here, configure display language, that allows you now to pick any of those packs that you have installed. So you can see I only have installed a few subsets of them available in here. So let's pick the German one. And it requires a full restart of VS Code. All your windows will reload and then will come up now in that language. And you would see then that the views, the menus of VS Code have all been localized using the VS Code language packs. But then now with these additions, you have now also localized content for the Zowe views. So for the right-click menus example, this is now all German strings, any pop-up dialogues, and so on, right? So you can switch between different languages. Let's switch perhaps to Japanese to make this look more impressive than the German. As you can now see, all the menus are in Japanese, as well as within Zowe Explorer, everything has been localized to Japanese strings, the output views down here, and so on. So that's really the main demo. Just wanted to add, oops, let me quickly switch this back to English. I can see what I'm doing, but you can see that in the command palette, you will still see the English string, right? So for developers, for example, who test these localizations, there's still a way to try this and get around. But there's also the pseudo language support available now. So that's also an artificial language that has been designed to still be readable by English users. You can see this kind of says pseudo language in here, and then all strings will be translated in this kind of way. And there's algorithms that translate all kinds of English strings over to this, so the developer can test for localization without being required to speak another localization. So the way we integrated this into Zowe Explorer, we added just a simple download localization script. If you're a contributor to Zowe Explorer and want to use these during development, there's now this fetch localization script that will be called as part of PNPM package. And so anyone can execute this because the Artifactory is freely readable to everyone. And then while it's building the VSIX file that you can then use for testing, you can see now it's saying here it's retrieving the localization from this particular date, right? From yesterday, there was a build of these strings available. It will pull this in, and then it can be used directly for development and testing. So it can happen that these strings are perhaps a day or two behind what currently happens in Zowe Explorer, but strings do not change too often, right? So there might be 1 or 2 strings that got introduced missing or updated in between these snapshots that are available for download. But generally, they are kept up to date through regular builds that we're providing in-house at IBM and then pushing updated strings back out to the Artifactory. Any questions?
Peter, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just one small question. So, yeah, this is really great that you're able to do this. I had the same idea. It's like, okay, we can crowdsource this, but if people don't show up, then, what can you do? But now that you have this capability, if you do have international audiences trying it out, there's a possibility that they will have an idea for a better translation. So I'm just saying it should be as easy as possible in the documentation or in GitHub to find out where to submit alternative translations when people see them.
Yeah, so definitely it's possible just to submit an issue and list all the fixes to perhaps localizations as well. We even seen this already that people submitted that. And we basically use a memory for the translation, right? So basically strings only get translated once until they're changed again. And actually, I forgot to mention that IBM currently only pays for human translation for French, right? For this Canada requirement. So here, all the strings are actually sent to human translators who will make sure they're consistent and follow all kinds of other guidelines that the AI might be missing. And so currently this is only being paid for French or any other languages. We definitely would welcome anyone contributing new strings. And I know that the team is also testing out some open source community site for contributing strings as well. But I think we can accept both either through this community site or through just issues. And then we would enter them into our memory and then they can be used there, right? So it would still be good though if somebody submits some new strings in a language that nobody speaks, that there would be someone verifying that these are actually accurate and correct, right? So perhaps we could establish a rule that they require 5 upvotes or reviews from native speakers as well before we actually put them in there, right? To avoid that somebody, put some root terms in there and we don't realize that they're in there, right? So it's always a challenge with community contributions that you do not really know if you don't speak the language what's they're contributing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, all good thoughts, just, food for thought.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, my question was related to, I'm just trying to get my arms around where this stuff lives. And in the view of the extender or consumer who is interested in using it, what is their perception of how it's supported?
Supported through the community, right? So basically, when you download now Zowe Explorer through the OpenVSX or the VS Code Marketplace, you'll get these localized versions. So all you need to do is follow the instructions of Microsoft's documentation, how to switch languages.
Okay.
And then it will appear in those languages. So actually, we do not cover all of these languages. We actually looked at telemetry data of our commercial products that IBM is selling and determined we're going to support the 6 most popular ones, or 5 most popular ones, right? So German, Spanish, French, Japanese, and Portuguese, Brazil are the ones that we currently
okay. Is it fair to say that this lives in the Visual Studio Code marketplace? I'm trying to delineate between what lives within Zowe's framework and what lives in Visual Studio Code or VSIX. And this clearly is not within Zowe's domain. Is that true?
Not entirely. So the translation happens on IBM's pipeline behind the firewall, but then we push us to this Artifactory that's maintained by the Zowe organization, right? So we were given access with a dedicated username and password to push these zip files with the strings to this Artifactory, and then the Zowe pipeline will pick it from here and through the command I just demonstrated. So then it will be put into the build.
So users will clearly get an understanding that this is something that they expect support from Zowe.
Yeah, like in GitHub, right? So through issues and so on, and best effort basis. And again, these zip files have a license in them, but the assumption is, right, that anything related to Zowe will be under EPL license. So if people like create their own fork of Zowe Explorer and use these strings, it would be under EPL license. So they would have to make them available again if they modify these strings and all of that, right? So if necessary, I could also include an EPL license into this package's zip file as well if we want to do that to make sure this is licensed correctly.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I think next was Dave.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Okay, I will be pretty quick, don't worry. So what I wanted to do really was just say hi. We are contributing to the Kix extension. I wanted to just kind of revive your memories. I don't know how much it's been shown before. We didn't show anything at the last demo session. But in the last few months, we've been working on bringing the look and feel more in line with Zowe. So taking the kind of graphics that we had previously, just trying to make them fit the Zowe and the Kix paradigms a bit better. We have untangled a bunch of bugs that had popped in around interoperating with other extensions and around the Zowe v3 profile updates. We've done a couple of other bits like reflowing session tokens rather than sending basic auth each time, which were kind of requirements that we had. And we have also fulfilled a user request from a couple of years ago, which is if you have a Kix region, there is a job underneath this. And if something goes wrong, you might want to see the logs for that job. So we have added a right-click show region logs menu item, which will try and identify the matching ZOS connection and open the job log in there so that you can kind of quickly get to your job rather than trying to work out what the name of the job for this region is and go and search and find it. So trying to take you from one to the other. So yeah, really all I wanted to do was say hello. If you would like to talk about Kix, we do have a discussions tab and we'd welcome discussion and hopefully you'll see more demos from us coming. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks for joining. Looks good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that with this, we've been through everything from Explorer for VS Code. Am I correct?
I think it looks like mediation layer next on my script.
So for API mediation there, this is just announcement. We have tested Java 21 support. We had to make some minor changes to support Java 21, but from Zowe 3.2, the API mediation there will run on Java 21 properly. That's all from us. So to you, Sean.
All right. Just a moment. I wanted to show a few small things. It won't take very long. So first thing to look at is, and you'll see this within the 3.3 roadmap, but essentially we're trying to make the servers easier for users to figure out if something is wrong, what is wrong, and what they can do to correct it. So first thing you'll notice in 3.2 is when you start up Zowe, there's going to be some more information right at the top. So one of the things that you'll notice, let me just make some lines here to show you, but essentially this information right here is new, that the logs will print out the ZOS version and the ESM. So if you're interacting with someone providing support, then they'll have that information a lot easier. And additionally, we never really printed the Java version. We were always printing the Java path, but often that doesn't really tell you what version it is. So now the Java version is printed if a component that is using Java is running. And same is true for Node. If you are using Node, then Node gets printed. So just a little bit more diagnostic information. The second thing that we added to 3.2, oh, and you can see the Node version down here. But the second thing that we added to 3.2 is very basic certificate checks. Certificates are, from what I've seen in doing support, a common pain point when setting up servers. And time and time again, we will point people to documentation, but by then it's kind of too late in that they've already contacted us and everyone's spent a fair bit of time. So better than reading documentation is if the code can tell you that it has spotted an issue. So this isn't just within the Web UI squad or the ZOS squad or the mediation layer squad. It's kind of something that we're all pitching in on. The mediation layer squad has a certificate analyzer jar that I think will be rolling in a future release to do even more sophisticated stuff. But what we have in 3.2 is a little bit more basic and conditional. We have a thing that we call the certificate checker, and it only runs if you're running the app server. Again, probably the certificate analyzer jar will run unconditionally when we get to that. But for now, just a little bit of Node.js code when the app server runs that it will check if the certificates are valid for use in Zowe. And so if certificates are valid, you just get certificate checks complete. But also you get information on when the certificate will expire. Because we have had users that said, I changed nothing and Zowe doesn't work. And sure enough, they didn't change anything, but their certificates expired. So now we print that to give people a heads up. However, let's say that a certificate was invalid. What would you see? Well, it's going to tell you why it's invalid. So we're going to check everything that we know to be required for Zowe. And so if you don't have the EKU property set up for your certificate properly, then it's going to print out what part you're missing. In this case, it's client auth. And this number, it may look kind of nasty, but if you pop that into Google, it'll tell you exactly what that means. So it's a searchable string, and the very next line is like a call to action. Oh, go read this page of documentation, find out more. And finally, another call to action, just that Zowe isn't going to start until you go and fix this. So this will speed up certificate related issues, and that people will be able to see what they did wrong and have a pretty good indication of how to fix it before they even need to talk to another person. This is a category of items that we want to do more of in 3.3. You might see some in the roadmap, but basically the idea is what you could call pre-flight checks or install verification. The idea being that users can make errors, but if we spot them, we can tell them how to correct the errors. So we do have some other stuff coming in the pipeline, but that's what's in 3.2. Any questions on that before I move on to ATTLS?
No, I just want to say that it looks really great. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, and Sean, I just wanted to clarify for the audience, what you're focused in on here are just general Zoe server-side install improvements, sounds like, right? This pre-flight, as opposed to, I mean, usually when we go to you, we're focused in on desktop web UI, but you're talking about a more global topic.
Yeah, so a lot
Okay.
of my activities lately have been more in the ZOS squad because I'm trying to take a broader approach of how to make users happier and quicker time to success. So yeah, frankly, in 3.2, there's not much in the desktop that's changed. It's rather this kind of work.
Gotcha. Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yep. So with regards to ATTLS, that is something that did change in the app server as well. If you go into the Zowe documentation these days, what you'll see is when you get to the configuring certificates section, you have two choices: configuring and customizing native TLS or ATTLS instead, right? And these are one or other choices. Now, this documentation, I don't think it changed for 3.2, but I just want to highlight this part right here. Specifically, ignore the client part. I think we're actually going to deprecate that because it's just a confusing parameter that when you enable ATTLS, instead of thinking of it as server and client, just think of it as on or off globally. You know, it either should be all on or all off, not some weird mix of the two. But in older releases of Zowe, we had various bugs and limitations with ATTLS, so there were many asterisks involved. And we have been, with each release, kind of removing the asterisks and making it more simple. So although this documentation hasn't really changed recently, I would say it's closer to the truth that you can just go in, set Zowe network server TLS ATTLS to true, and then ensure that you have your ATTLS rules set up, and on you go, right? So there were bugs in older releases of Zowe in which this wasn't being respected, or it was being respected, but some servers forgot to do tasks that they otherwise would have done. We spotted in ZSS that it wasn't engaging in SSO when this was set, and we fixed that for 3.2. In 3.2, the app server had a bug fix where it wasn't able to communicate with the discovery server when this was set. So now we don't have those asterisks. It used to be that some servers would work perfectly, others might not, or that when you combine two servers that worked perfectly in a vacuum, they wouldn't communicate very well with each other. And this is no longer true. So I would say that the state of ATTLS is better than ever, but also at a point in which I think it's ready for more general use. And some of these rules here might be able to be farther simplified because all the servers support it now, so you don't have to do pattern matching to treat the mediation layer differently from the app server. They all kind of obey the same rules. So yeah, it's there's not much to show here. I just wanted to make people know that if they tried ATTLS in the past, and it didn't work for them, here's a chance to try it again. And if you haven't tried ATTLS and you want to, this is the release for you. So any questions?
Sean, this is
Okay.
Andrew. This is Andrew. I just wanted to mention, from the Docs Squad side, if you want to address, kind of updating what we have for the documentation or ATTLS, let's try to tackle that. I did add it to the Doc Squad plan for this version. So let me know when you want to sync up on that.
Yes, I don't recall if you were there when I spoke with Joe Winchester, but there are some farther simplifications that can be done on the doc side. So yeah, I think we will get to that in this next quarter.
Hey, Sean, from a consumer point of view, say someone who's on an older release, say a V2 release, looking to upgrade to the latest 3.2. Is there anything in particular they have to be mindful of if they had been using ATTLS?
So if people were an early adopter of ATTLS, the configuration became simpler. I don't think we removed any of the old configurations. So if they're still using old configurations, it should still work. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that they could do some spring cleaning and then it would be less confusing for them.
Okay.
Now, when I just said that 3.2 is like the best ever ATTLS release, the same is also true of 2.18.1. We made some very specific changes that went into the two latest releases.
Ah, okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Okay. I guess I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much for the update. And if we are a bit behind the time. Anyway, we will take 5 minutes break. So we will reconvene at 05 and then we will go over the plans for the next release. So meet back in 5 minutes. Hey everyone, it's 05. I hope that you are back from a short break. We will start with the planning for 303 and we will start with the doc squad. Andrew, it's yours.
Okay, I need to present what I have here. Just a moment, but while I find the plan, just a second. Okay, I should be able to present in just a second.
Should we start with the squad while you are preparing?
Yeah,
Andrew?
sure. Sorry, I was fumbling for the screen. Sorry about that.
Okay. Adam, can you share with the updates from CLI meanwhile?
Sure. Okay. All right. So for the CLI squad, I'll keep this short and sweet. We intend to focus most of our efforts on Zowe Explorer. There's a lot of overlap between the squads in terms of engineers. Of course, we're still going to provide bug fixes, technical currency updates, and continue to support Zowe Explorer's usage of the Zowe Client Node.js SDK. In the plan, we have a few things to address in team config around how Zowe CLI and Zowe Explorer select authentication methods from the information provided in a team config. Another item is the ability to load client certs from OS cert storage. I do have some concerns here, such as how do users enter certificates into the store? How do we know what certificates to use for Zowe CLI or Zowe Explorer connections, and how do users know what to put into their config? There are a few questions to answer here. But beyond that, we're planning to also look at conformance automation, automating checking for conformance. We'll be finalizing the Zowe Client SDK conformance program criteria and working towards the OpenSSF best practices silver badge. And that's it for CLI.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, Andrew, are you ready with the docs? Andrew? Okay, so who can present the Explorer for VS Code?
I can do that.
Then Adam, it's yours.
Okay. All right. So for Zowe Explorer, we're planning some enhancements around how users interact with and modify team configs. We're also looking to make some progress with the OpenSSF best practices badge requirements, and we've got a few enhancements that we'd like to make to the integrated terminal functionality that was added in 3.1. We have some more here around adding table views for data sets and USS files, similar to what we did for listing jobs in the table. We also have some additional UX related functionality, like the ability to easily download a data set, member or a USS file to a local folder. Right now, you have to open the member and save using the VS Code file menu, which isn't really obvious from a UX standpoint. We're also looking at a browse or read-only mode for cases where a user wants to be sure that they are not going to accidentally modify a file or a data set. And we have some additional work to support drag and drop operations, and one more to let users upload a file in a specific encoding. Moving on, we have 2 bug fixes for the FTP extension, some documentation enhancements, and for the Kix extension, we have a number of items, including things like a richer attributes view for Kix resources, focused on information that developers need. We also are planning to let users specify a working region, which can enable more efficient use by using commands directly from the command palette in VS Code. And there are also plans to clean up the available commands in the command palette for the Kix extension to just provide those that do not require an item in the tree to be selected. And then there's some continued work on end-to-end tests for the extension. And that's the plan.
Okay, thanks for the update. It looks like a very good plan. Does anyone has any question? Okay, I don't hear any.
I should be ready now. Sorry about that.
Okay, then it's with you, Andrew, and please update us on the dog squad plans.
Okay. Okay. So let's see here. So for the doc squad, we've updated our milestones for install and API ML and CLI related issues, and we've updated this for v3.3. We have some high and medium priority items that I'll just go over here. Starting off, I'll follow up on something that Fernando mentioned earlier. We want to make sure that there are no V1 profiles that are described in our V3 doc, as these V1 profiles are no longer supported. And there are also some references to the Zowe profiles command group, which should also be removed for the V3 doc. We have a few issues around authenticating with client certificates that we'd like to address. Some are just requiring some improved descriptions and clarifications, that sort of thing. Also, we would like to add some details around the ZWE init APF auth command, specifically around the creation of particular data set, and question about whether we have whether this data set is manual or needs to be as part of the overall installation. We want to also add some more details on when the authorization header is missing in our API-ML area codes troubleshooting article, and also how the user can leverage logs when encountering this error. One of the larger tasks that we'd like to take on in this milestone is documenting the ZOSMF workflows that specifically certain defaults that apply to some specific use cases that are focused around the mediation layer. So we want to provide some clear documentation around these workflows and just make sure that we're clear about, which specific workflows apply to which use cases, because we have already some other workflows in our Zowe docs. Another issue that we'd like to address centers around some of the high level of available resources that are necessary for Zowe startup, and the recommendation of properly setting up the class when within the workload manager. So basically to limit the resources available to the job, so that we basically want to document the recommended configuration of the workload management setup. Let's see here. Another item that we're going to look at for this milestone is to begin drafting the overview of how authentication works for API-ML, which basically an overview describing the various authentication mechanisms, whereby ZOSMF can be used for as an authentication provider, but also SAF for authentication in past ticket scenarios. And ultimately, we'd like to have an overview which describes these various authentication methods, both for northbound and southbound, and the relation within the features for API-ML. Another issue of high priority would then also be to adjust the onboarding configuration doc for an adapter of API-ML with past tickets who's already enabled the first service. So this is something that RPM opened as an issue recently. So when already a past ticket has already been onboarded, for initial service has been onboarded, and basically trying to clarify what is required to onboard then further services. For this issue, part of the acceptance criteria would be onboarding configuration documentation to be adjusted to like basically separate between scenarios when the user already has their first service onboarded with past tickets enabled, and scenario when the user wants to onboard subsequent services with past tickets enabled. So we just want to make sure that we clarify those two particular use cases. Another high priority item, which Sean just had touched on just a few minutes ago, is that we're carrying over from our 3.2, our improvements to the cleanup and consolidation of our ATTLS documentation. So there's been some conversation in the ticket between Sean and Mark Eckert, which I understand is kind of focuses around the rule implementations. So as I mentioned earlier, the Doc Squad is available to collaborate on that and support the doc improvements whenever the other SMEs would like to get started on that with us. Okay, for CLI, we also have documenting action items for the CII badge criteria, and Anna will be working with the Zowe Explorer Squad to complete some of the remaining items there. And we'd also like to address the matter of our Google indexing. I think we mentioned this previously, but currently the indexing calls for it looks at the older versions of ZoeDoc articles, and they're not displaying the latest version in the search results. So in order to address this, we'll need to apply some annotations to help alter Google so that the older versions of ZoeDoc articles are ignored when there's a later version available. And then I just want to mention one other thing, as Rose touched on in the kickoff session, and that is that the Doc Squad is planning to make a presentation, basically just kind of helping users kind of like figure out how to navigate around ZoeDocs, and so that users will know where they can find specific information that they're looking for, and also any various features in ZoeDocs to basically make their inquiries and to create issues. So we're looking forward to making that presentation in June. I think that's about it from us.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. This will be the upcoming Zowe quarterly update webinar. It will be scheduled for, I think we settled in on the last Wednesday in June, if I'm not mistaken, the 25th.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's about it from us.
Okay, thank you very much. Any
Sure.
questions, anyone? I don't hear any. So Vladislav, any update from Explorer for IntelliJ?
Yeah, sure. Let me share. Yeah, actually, I'm not going to speak about every item we have in here, but yeah, we're planning to release 2.3 version as a 3.3 Zowe version. With some additions, unfortunately, we did not succeed with the API ML feature yet, but we're still working on that, and most probably, if it is done somewhere in the middle between the current version and the next, and we will test it, then we will release that feature. So actually, we are planning to release a intermediate patch update if there are any bug fixes. About the significant things, we are planning to reduce the tech debt, and also we are working on the unit tests and planning to cover as much as we can until the next release. Also, there are automated regression suite issues added, so we are planning to automate regression testing of the plugin. And step by step adding the test automated test cases and suits. Yeah, there were 3 mentees from Canada, London University, that provided some features, and there are updates and blogs in LinkedIn as well as the OMP page, web page. So they introduced some significant features that need to be adjusted with the unit tests and some other things. So we will be working on that and later introduce in the plugin or in some other form, maybe of a plugin, of a different plugin or a set of plugins and so on. So about the significant things, yes, I said mostly it's about the stabilizing the plugin and introducing the features. We are already working on that. I guess that's it from my point.
Okay. Any questions from anyone? Then thank you for the updates. I guess, Mark, do you have something to present for installation and configuration?
Sure. Okay, should be sharing. For the system squad, this quarter, most of our work is going to, as always, be focused on automation, infrastructure management, and improvements to install and configuration as we can get around to it. I'm going to talk about this top half in a second, but for this quarter, we're just picking up high priority issues out of our backlog and working on them. Bugs or enhancements that are required, again, to improve the configuration and installation experience for Zowe. This particular quarter, we have a couple related to PSWIs that we're going to be working on in particular, and then also reviewing where we can add even more automation and test coverage to the ZWE tool. For this top half of work that's rolling over from the last quarter, I don't have any new updates on the open mainframe box, so I think that's just, we're not expecting anything new to happen there this quarter. But there is, speaking of large PRs, as earlier in this meeting, there is this one large PR called the Zowe Unit Refactor JCL that we'd like to consider getting merged in for the 3.3 release. This was originally scheduled for the 3.0 release, but we pushed it back that we could have a little more time to write more tests to cover different edge cases, and we also need to work around some issues about how this integrated with PSWIs. This is pretty much ready for merge now, but it's quite large. It is, I think, like 3,500 lines of feature code, and the total PR changes like 24,000 lines of code, including all the test cases that we've written for it. So I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention because I think what we're going to be asking for this quarter is maybe a little more capacity than usual from the squads to test and review these changes that we'd like to get in. I think additionally, I can speak more to the background and recap what this PR is in a TSC call this week or next. And yeah, I think that covers the majority of our plans for this quarter. Comments or questions?
Yeah, so Mark, I was going to bring up that point because, I'm glad you said what you did because I got back to the JCL and its stuff and tested it, and to the best of my testing ability within Rocket, it looks ready to go. But I know that in the past, there were some scenarios that were testable at Broadcom that weren't testable at Rocket. So as long as you guys are good to go, I'm good to go, right? So things are looking pretty positive, and I feel the same way that with enough testing that it could go into 3.3. The one other thing that I started doing, and it didn't happen for 3.2, but I said maybe 3.3, is that shift from creating key stores to having people bring their own key rings by default. I would love to be able to do that, but I think I might need assistance from you to make sure that we have the testing automation geared for that.
Yep, I can add that to our plan, no problem.
Cool.
And Mark, I just noticed inside of IBM when the Node guys put out a PTF or whatever, and I really cut and pasted and put it in TSC or System Slack. Or is that the best way? Am I duplicating? Do you find out about those via other means? I just tell me if it's worth it.
It's been useful to me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
Yep. Usually that's the first place I find out about the new Node release, and then I can update the systems.
All right. Sound good.
Okay. It seems to be it. Thank you very much, Mark, for the update. Sean, I guess you're gonna present the web UI.
Yeah, so I can go over it really quickly. Basically, we have a roadmap full of install wizard enhancements, and that really hasn't changed. But one of the hurdles that we're going to run into with the install wizard is keeping the pace with the stuff that's going on in the ZOS and system squads for these ZWE refinements. So I think that's probably going to be the bulk of the web UI squad's contributions to 3.3 is making sure that the wizard is following along with that. And also recovery of some technical debt. The editor was supposed to make it into 3.2, but didn't. So I think that'll go into 3.3. The editor is still present in the V2 desktop, but not yet the V3 desktop. And so we just need to fix that. But finally, when it comes to actual enhancements to the install wizard beyond just keeping pace with CWE enhancements, we do want to have it do more investigation and insight of the certificates that the users are bringing along, to sort of be the other half of the equation on improving certificates, right? I showed in that demo earlier that Zowe is gaining the ability to verify certificates. Well, the farther left we can shift that, the earlier problems can be spotted. So the install wizard would be a great place to do that.
Sounds good.
I did have a question related to the wizard and then the API ML simplification. Is there anything in the wizard that is needed, or are the
that's a great point, Bruce. I saw that there's a PR out for that, and I was hoping that the mediation layer squad would keep the web UI squad informed of when that's dropping, because we will need to take a look and see if the wizard needs changes. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, I will be talking about it in the API mediation layer plans, but in general, our plan is to have it done for free. We've integrated the first changes in the code base as of now. So I think that nightly from today will already contain the changes for the first services. So we should, if there are any problems and changes, we should start seeing it.
Great, thanks to you both. I was just trying to connect the dots. Thanks.
Sorry to interrupt that. Anything else you wanted to add, Sean?
No, that's it.
Okay, anyone else has any questions towards what was presented for WebUI? I don't hear any, so I don't see Joe Devlin. Is there anyone who can present plans for the ZOS squad?
I don't see him either, but I can try to summarize things. I don't want to. Sometimes I get in trouble speaking for other people here, and then, maybe they have different plans. But I've been talking a lot about this sort of pre-flight checks, right? We saw in the 3.2 demo that we can validate certificates, but what else can we do, right? And so one of the things that there's already a pull request out for is making the world's smallest TCP server to simply bind to a socket, see if you even have the permissions to do a bind. And if you don't, to print out instructions to the user on, what security things that they've missed. So we've been looking in general at what are the things that users must do that maybe they forgot to do that we can programmatically check for and print warnings on. So we're making a bind test binary. We're also making a ZIS test binary that can be able to inform the user if they forgot to start up ZIS in a situation in which it was required. We have been thinking about it should be possible to do an ATTLS test, where if you have set ATTLS true in the YAML, that it better also be correctly configured in the rule files. I think Jakob, you told me that the mediation layer has the ability to detect that, but not the ability to abort Zowe due to the way that the launcher is constructed. So we're thinking of, doing very similar logic, but putting it in a place where an abort is possible and is more generic. And honestly, if you can think of any other things that users could make mistakes on that we could detect, I would love to keep on adding wish list items to make things really, really easy. We'll see what goes into 3.3, but that's sort of a hot topic in the ZOS squad lately, is writing little binaries. And to be honest, we're trying to write these binaries in really generic ways that could be used outside of Zowe as well. So we might be able to, like, to some degree, spin these out into a different project, and people could, download a distribution of utility binaries and do whatever they want with them. But we're going to tie them into ZWE. You heard, I was just talking to Mark about that we should be able to switch to bringing your own keyring by default. There are just a lot of little PRs for ZWE improvements. And finally, one improvement that was already merged, so it will be in the next release, is we are removing the limitation on configuration files only being able to have one member name. We had this arbitrary restriction where you could put your configuration files in a PDS, but you could only have one member name. Now you can do whatever you want, right? So that restriction has just been lifted.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know if I missed anything. I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to think about what the ZOS squad is up to.
Oh no.
Sean, this is Onno. Quick question. When you were talking about checking ATTLS, you mentioned something about rules. I wasn't following there. Is it that you're not actually having the code to ask ATTLS that ATTLS is active, or are you just meaning that, hey, this is another component of Zowe? If you say it's using ATTLS, is that component also configured to use ATTLS? Is that what you meant?
ATTLS in Zowe is fairly complicated today because you're looking at like a minimum of 5 servers that all need the correct rules, and they need to be able to talk to each other as well as to ZOSMF, as well as to browsers. So there's a lot of things that you would do in that pageant configuration to make sure that it's right, and that just invites a lot of user error. So some of the servers check the socket to see if ATTLS is present, because keep in mind that Zowe by default brings its own TLS implementation of various types, like JS, SE, and so on. And so when the user's doing ATTLS, we have to turn off our own TLS, and that invites risk. So without the ability to detect on that socket, we have to trust the users. And what I'm trying to do is to move away from trust and move towards verify.
So you're doing the right thing. I was first thinking that you were just checking some config file to see if for another component it was also set to ATTLS. But if you're actually checking the socket, then that's what you should be doing. Otherwise, I would have pointed that out. Thanks.
Right. Yeah. So we're not there today. We're partially there, and we want to be completely there. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, then thanks, Sean, for the updates. The last part is update for the API mediation layer. There is a slight chance that you see the roadmap.
Yep.
Cool. So apart from defects, bug fixes that we will work on as they are coming, and we also have quite a long backlog of them, there are 3 things that we want to take care of. First is we intend to finish the transition to the simplified architecture by 3.3, and we can talk a bit more about what does it mean a bit afterwards. We want to improve the authentication overview in the Zowe docs. There are lots of ways how the authentication can be done, and there are lots of flows that this means that we want to outline in a way that's more consumable than it is now. Probably also with what configuration you might need, and not just in Zowe, but also around Zowe in the ZOS and in other components. And we need to figure out what do we do about the ciphers that we will support in the TLS, like the native TLS. It seems that currently we are supporting some suites that are considered weak, but we are running into the fact that first, there are different authorities that has different set of what weak means. Second, it means that some of the customers or users who has these cipher suites, if we don't provide support for the older ones, just won't run Zowe properly. So we will talk about it more and on TSC and how to do it properly. But we know that we will need to take a look and figure it out by 3.3 somehow. As for the transition to simplified architecture, if I go into a bit more details, as of now, we've merged the PR that collocates the first 2 servers, API mediation layer, API gateway, and discovery service. So far, it seems good. We don't see any problem on our integration testing. So during the nightly, there will be also the smoke tests run on Marist. I believe that they should run today. And as of now, it seems that we should be able to do the transition without like breaking changes or without anything that's breaking the things that we consider public APIs. So that's kind of it. Any question?
No questions. Just that's very good news.
Yeah, I really do hope that it's gonna simplify lots of things around operations and setups and everything. Even development, I believe it's gonna be faster. But let's see. Okay, as I don't hear any questions, and API mediation layer is the last squad to present. Thanks everyone for joining us. For those who want to go back for anything, the meeting is recorded and you should be able to access the recording from the Linux Foundation calendar. That's on zowe.org. I will also be sharing the recording on my LinkedIn and in a few other places in case you don't want to look at yourselves. And I do plan to provide May with a short blog post that outlines the things we were talking about here so that OMP can share the information around the new Zowe release. With that stated, that's all from me. Thanks everyone for joining and have a nice next quarter, and we will meet again in 3 months.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.